Joining me now is esteemed geologist and author, Professor Ian Plimer. Good to see you again, Ian. Thank you for joining me on the show. I want to start with the former wet Liberal Matt Kean, who, of course, the Albanese government appointed as the chair of the Climate Change Authority. Well, he's now unleashed a diatribe of climate fear-mongering in 9 newspapers, claiming that the LA fires mean Australia must invest in a lot more in stopping climate change. He said Australia and other nations must step up efforts to slow and then halt the rise in greenhouse gases, mostly sourced from burning fossil fuels, as soon as possible. We can reduce the climate impacts to come if we have the wit and will to do so. A delay in taking climate action is not an option. Ian, there were so many factors that went towards those LA fires. As we know, there was a lack of taking action from government and local authorities. But what do you think of the take by Matt Kean?
Well, firstly, there's a pub next door. I should have had my MAGA hat on and gone into the pub rather than doing this interview from the Goyder Council chambers in Borough. I'm sorry, I wish I'd known you were going to do that.
What a shame.
I've got 3 MAGA hats in my car.
Oh, that's a shame. Next time you come on.
Next time. The LA fires result from many of the reasons that we get fires in Australia. Highly inflammable pine and eucalypts, poor maintenance of power lines, lack of access, and in the case of LA, city firefighters trying to fight bushfires. In the case of LA, very old infrastructure, power lines, which created some of the fires. Now, they're all factors that we have in the Australian fires, but certainly in LA, they didn't do backburning, something we don't do much of in this country. And the main reason we have catastrophic fires in this country are because of a lack of maintenance of our forests. People also like to build houses in the middle of forests and be surrounded by nature, which might burn them out. We had massive fires here in 1851, massive fires in 1939. Anything we've had recently pales into insignificance compared with previous fires. So I think Mr. Kean has to have a knowledge of history of fires and has to have a knowledge of what climate really does. Now, no one's ever shown that human emissions of carbon dioxide drive global warming. We still don't have a catastrophic climate. We still don't have massive climate change. We are having business as usual with cycles of climate. Sometimes they intersect and you get slight changes which are a bit more rapid than other times. So Mr. Kean is talking his own book. He does not have a job unless he does that. And I think he's trying to frighten people witless. Bushfires have been in Australia well before we started to emit carbon dioxide.
Absolutely, and yet time and time again, as soon as there's a fire, the left, they come out in their droves with the same old narrative. Now, we've got to talk about this heat wave in New South Wales today. The mercury is tipping 40 degrees in parts, and right on cue, Ian, here are the warnings of even more blackouts due to fears that the extreme heat will overload the grid. Ian, every time there's a heat wave, it's the same warning. How much is this net zero fantasy sending this country backward, and we're paying for it?
Well, firstly, it wasn't a heat wave. It was warm weather. And in previous times, we used to call it summer. Apparently now it's global warming. Yesterday, I was outside Broken Hill and the temperature was 47.5. Now, I think that's hot. And that is a hot summer due to having clear skies and a great high over us. So we normally have heat waves. We have now people in the cities who are using much more power per capita than they did 50 or 80 years ago. When I was a child in Sydney, if you wanted air conditioning, you'd open the windows. If you wanted to warm the house, you'd close the windows. Now people have air conditioners, which consume a lot of power. That puts the grid under stress. And what that's telling us is that we haven't had an infrastructure investment for a long period of time. We've been killing off the reliable, cheap energy sources like coal-fired power that keep the system running, and we've replaced them with unreliable power. When I was driving earlier today, coming down through Mount Bryan, there were about 80 wind turbines. Not one of them was moving. So the whole infrastructure change to have us on so-called net zero and renewables is just nonsense. The only thing renewable about renewable energy are the subsidies. They just keep coming. So I think people are being a little bit soft. It's snowflakes. It's 38 degrees and they think they're going to die. Well, it's much, much hotter in other parts of the world. You can get into the Sahara or Saudi in summertime, it's 56 degrees. They have air conditioning in their buildings. We have the same. When people have high temperatures, that consumes a lot of power. Our system is not up to it. And it's not a fault of climate. It's not net zero. It's that we have not made investments by using capital over the last 20 years. We're suffering from our stupidity.